Welcome along to part 3 of this fairly slow-paced video series where I build a system that can monitor the moisture levels of my houseplants, mainly for fun. What you're looking at here is a snippet from the end of the video, so this is where we're going to get to today. And everything is working. Each one of these 16 dots represents one plant in my room, and the tail following it around is how much moisture is in the soil. If you're interested in what music I have in the background today, it's kind of auto-generated. I used the majority of my own chill music in the last 2 videos, and yeah, I thought I'll try something new, so I just threw a bunch of loops into Ableton Live which were the same key, made a max patch that randomly chooses some, and then does some phrasing, a little bit of effects, and just keeps that going. So it just kind of generates endless music, I guess. Kind of works quite well. I'd like to explore it more. But let's get into this. So here's a fast forwarded version of me stripping the Cat5 cable. We're getting out these twisted pairs, a whole bunch of good wires we can use. This video is going to be a little bit quicker than the last one. We're going to have some time lapses, including out of focus bolts. This is me stripping the wire I got out of the Cat5. So I'm stripping the ends so we can attach them to nails, galvanized nails, to be conductive. And we attach those by using heat shrink, which I'm very carefully cutting out here. So we heat this up over the wire and the nail, and it shrinks and keeps things nice and tight. So, why am I doing this? I did say for fun, but there's a few reasons. I'm kind of building my skill sets here, so you'll see a bit later in the video, there's an absolute disaster. Well, as far as this project can go anyway, and it's because I suck at it, and I don't want to suck at it. And the only way to not suck at it is to keep doing it. So that's one reason. The other reasons are, this particular part here and the stripping of the cable, I found it quite meditative. It's kind of a step closer to mindfulness, which I practice. I do practice meditation, not as often as I'd like, but enough that it helps me a lot. My brain is very noisy all the time, and it always has been. I didn't actually realize that until I gave mindfulness a go. It took me a lot of putting aside of skepticism and stuff to actually give it a go, but it's helped me significantly. It kind of gives me some time during the day which is just for me to not think about stuff, and even just 5 minutes, it's incredibly powerful. So when I'm doing this kind of process, in this case counting out nails, it's all I'm thinking about, and everything else can just fuck off. So I'm getting the nails out here to get ready to attach to these twisted pairs. You'll see I've got 16 pairs of nails, and I've got 16 wires or 16 twisted pairs. In the last video I was using solder. Decided against that because it is taking up a lot of time, especially if I have to do this 32 times. But I don't think it's necessary. I think this heat shrink I've got, it's the perfect size, and once it's heated, it's basically like you're coating everything in rubber. So on goes the heat shrink over the wire. I just kind of wrapped it around below the head of the nail. It's a little fiddly. Usually after I do one or two of these, I figure out the best method, and yeah, so that just fits over everything. Get out the old butane torch, which again isn't probably the most ideal way of doing this, but it works for me. And that's all shrunk. There's pretty much no way that's getting off unless I really put force on it, so yeah, good enough. Let's just do the other one. Remember, we need 2 probes per plant. We're going to be measuring the current that goes between these 2 nails when they're inserted into the soil. So the more moisture in the soil, the more current that can pass through. And that's going to be our indicator of how wet or moist the soil is. You can see this second heat shrink. I've already got my technique down. And again, don't worry, I think I go into a time lapse after this one. Maybe I just like using a butane torch. It is quite fun. Here's me just testing it off camera. Giving it a wee tug. And yeah, we are done for the nail end of 1 twisted pair. So I'm just going to wrap it up kinda neatly, just so things don't get too chaotic. And we'll put that aside. And here's me doing the rest in fast forward. It's actually quite nice in fast forward. I think this probably took me 2 to 3 hours, the stripping of the wire and the connecting of the nails. Here's me using fritzing, which is software I have no idea how to use, and I'm mocking up whether I can use the ESP32 over the Arduino and a multiplexer, which I'll get into in a second. I also have a wee screen. And here's me writing some code for the ESP32. It does differ a bit from the Arduino, so there's quite a bit more we need to do here. We are working with 16 inputs. So here's the Arduino Uno, which we were using. And I'm not going to be using that anymore. This is a ESP32 dev board, and this has Bluetooth on it, it's got Wi-Fi on it, and that's one of the main benefits. It's also a lot more powerful, but not that we need more power for this project, but yeah, just mainly the Wi-Fi. But the problem is we don't have enough inputs for 16 sensors, which is 32 inputs. So I'm going to be using this multiplexer here. And a multiplex is kind of a way of getting multiple inputs coming into a limited amount of inputs. Here's the screen. It's just a very simple OLED screen. Kind of like the idea of having the readouts on their own wee screen as well. And the first thing I need to do is solder in some header pins onto the multiplexer. So I've already got the header pins in there. They're the part that push down into the breadboard, and as you can see, the multiplexer doesn't have one. Also struggling a little bit with the placement of this ESP32 dev kit, because when you place it into the breadboard, it doesn't actually have enough space to allow a dot on either side. So yeah, I have two smaller breadboards that I'm going to use. So the way I did this, I'm not sure if it's the correct way, but I put the header pins in first and placed the multiplexer over it. And here I am just trying to find a couple of small things to just prop it up so it's relatively level, like so. Get the camera down so you can see my terrible solder work. And yeah, it's a simple matter of just soldering each one of those points sticking out of the holes. I say simple, but yeah, I don't have the best tools or the experience, but I do this part okay, I think. So with the multiplexer, it connects to just a handful of inputs on the main board, the ESP32. I think we use 4 or 5. And what it does is it cycles through 16 inputs on the multiplexer. So you can see that's what I'm soldering now, 16 different inputs. Cycles through them really quickly, super fast. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And each time it gets to one of those inputs, it grabs the value, and then it sends that value along with what input it is to the device. So we're sort of able to read multiple inputs with only 4 or 5 inputs on the actual development kit. Quite a handy way of doing things when you're short on space. Just having a bit of trouble with this last one. Another reason why I think I'm doing this is I used to have quite a lot of trouble with getting off track. So I'd always have this idea of what I need to achieve in what I'm doing, whether it's work or just personal life, family, the community, the world, the environment, whatever. You know, because I'm so busy, I always was like, you know, these are the things I need to be doing, and if I'm doing anything else, I'm not on track, and that's bad. But that all turned out to be bullshit. I had to learn that the hard way, and yeah, so now, these days I allow myself to get off track. I mean, it can go the opposite way, but you know, you don't want to get too off track. And I guess you could say this is slightly aligned with what I do. So you can see I fucked that. That's okay. They're pretty bendy. Don't know if pliers are necessary, but they kind of just have to be at the right width for the holes, and the height's aren't that great either, but whatever. So there's also some headers that need to get soldered in the other side. These are the pins that will get connected to the ESP32 mainboard. So a pretty similar process here. I noticed that these aren't level, so I don't know, using whatever I've got to kind of push them in. And just remember, I've never done this before, so kind of making sure they line up before I push them in the holes, because as I learnt, pulling them out of the holes can be a bit tricky. It looks good. There was actually one way I could get off task back when I thought I couldn't get off task, and that was drinking. It's dangerous. I didn't know at the time. You know, if I got inebriated enough, I would veer off my path of what I thought I should be doing, wake up with a hangover and a knowledge of steam engines or some shit. Turns out you don't need to get drunk to learn about steam engines. But I couldn't quite figure that one out. In the middle of it all, had to get some help. And it worked. It's one of the best things I've ever done. Now I'm fully comfortable just totally sober and building weird shit. Could still get a bit carried away sometimes, but I'm learning to reel it in. So we've got these headers soldered in here now. Sorry, a bit of vulnerability there for you. Got these headers soldered in. And I'm going to be using these two mini breadboards for the ESP32. It's not the ideal solution, but it's all I've got. So you can see if we kind of poke them in here into two separate boards, we get these holes up the side, and yeah, we need those. So I'm just trying to match it up here. I think the reason I showed you the underside of the boards before was because they have adhesive on them. And just making sure. Yeah, no, it doesn't work. No good. So I'm going to get this in the way I want. Very good. Gonna have to use these 3 boards for the whole thing. Just kind of figuring out where I'm going to put this screen. Seems logical to place it down here, I think. I believe the pins I need to connect it to are on the bottom row there. I don't know, just playing around with positioning. What's going to be the least fuck around? I think that looks pretty good. I'm just doing some counting in my head. Alright, another time lapse, here we go. So I'm sticking those boards down onto the cardboard and we begin our wiring process. So I'm just connecting up everything I need to here. And now it's up to getting these resistors cut. I need a 10 kΩ resistor for each probe. Remember, these are pull down resistors. So if you're good at this stuff, you might have spotted my fatal mistake. Just plugging it in here to see what happens. Why not? What could go wrong? Well, the light turns on, but nothing else. Oh well. So my big mistake was I was thinking I need to connect. I don't know what I was thinking here, but I need to have those resistors connected to every single output of the multiplexer. So one per output. And then into the ground rail. So I was pretty frustrated because, it took a while to get these in. I've never done this before. Anyway, fast forward. So I've repositioned this multiplexer more in the middle because some of these resistors are going to have a bit more reach because of the gaps in the ground rail. So I've got that sorted. That's all good. And I'm going to plug it in. Am I going to plug it in now? Yeah, I'm going to plug it in. See what happens. I think at this stage I may have uploaded the code already. Yeah, so I have uploaded the code and I've only got it set to monitor probes 1 and 2 just so I can test out that this is in fact going to work. Here's trusty probe number 1. This is currently connected to a plant off screen. So we go in between the resistor and the multiplexer, and the other probe goes into the 3.3 volts, and you can see on the screen we've got a nice reading on probe 1. So I was pretty happy at this stage. Just going to try out one more probe. Just to be sure. And we've got a reading here too, so... Oh, there we go. Nice close up. See, plant 2 needs a bit of water. I think the max it goes up to is 4096. So we've kind of vastly shifted here to me surrounded by plants. These are all my 16 plants. And I'm at the stage where I need to start connecting the other end of the twisted pair wires to something I can plug into the breadboard. So I'm using these breadboard patch cables. Not sure what I'm doing here. Yep, I'm just going to strip them all in one go. You'll see I've got some nice strippers now, which I've borrowed from my housemate. It's made life a lot easier than just using pliers. So I am going to skip a little bit ahead here. I feel like We don't need to see Tom do more wiring. It's quite an exciting point in this project when I had the 16 plants, the 16 probes. As you can see, I've got the screen working, the multiplex is working, and I kind of know that all I have to do is get everything wired up and plugged in, and it should all just work. And I'm really surprised that it's all working up until now. I mean, there's quite a bit I had to do code-wise, but I mean, for me it was pretty tricky, but it was pretty straightforward stuff. So I have some even smaller heat shrink there. I think it's 1.5 millimeters, if I can read that correctly. And it's just enough to fit over these wires when they've been exposed and wrapped like I'm doing here. I had to do a bit of trial and error to figure out what the most secure way to twist these wires together was. I don't think I've quite got it perfect, but yeah, so see how I'm kind of twisting them and then kind of giving them a little kink. I'll be honest, a friend of mine showed me how to do it right, and I was watching like, oh yeah, cool, okay, and then I completely forgot. But I know you twist and then kind of kink it in like an S shape. Anyway, that's been working for me here, and then that's just enough for me to be able to slip over the heatsink. Heat shrink. And then yeah, just nuke it with the flame, and it's super solid. Kind of made me wonder why I never really used heat shrink before. You know, it's always been terrible solder jobs, and you know, getting out your electrical tape and trying to cut a piece off and it sticks to the carpet, and then you fuck that and it's crooked, and then once you've wrapped it around a few times it starts going out of symmetry, and yeah, fuck that. Heat shrink's the way. So I'm twisting the second pair together. If you look closely, you can kind of see I make kind of a bend, like an S bend, I guess. Kind of overlaps it across each other. And I don't think it does too much for the stability of the connection, but it does pad it out enough so that when the heat shrink goes over, it's pretty damn snug. And we will go into another time lapse soon, but I feel like the first time I do one of something, I think it's interesting to watch back. I don't know, you could be an electrical engineer and having a laugh, that's fine. Maybe you're finding watching somebody learn something for the first time that's really rudimentary relaxing. That would be nice. I mean, I'm assuming anybody who's sitting there going, oh my fucking god, Tom, get the fuck on with it, this sucks. I imagine they're probably not watching anymore anyway, so unless they're a masochist. Anyway, Here is the Arduino serial monitor or plotter, and you can see as I plug that in, nothing happened because I haven't plugged the other end in, but here we go. We've got one going into the ground and one going into the volts, and boom. It's a great feeling, that when you see that line jump. Especially 4 of them, the most I've done is 2. And now we have 4. Look at that, that's 4 different moisture levels for 4 different plants. And yeah, maybe the nails are a bit far apart in one plant and they're a bit close together in another, so this isn't exactly consistent readouts, but it's still data, and for practicality purposes at least it shows me that there's water in the soil. I think we see shortly what it looks like when there's a lot less water in the soil. Anyway, here's the time lapse. So you can see I keep adding and adding and adding and getting more and more lines. And man, I'm excited. But then there's a problem. That one didn't do anything. And it took me a little bit of figuring out, but after some Googling I realized that the Arduino IDE serial monitor, which is the graphs we're looking at, has a maximum of 8 plot points. So I'm like, oh, I can open up a serial port in Python and get it happening there. And then I was like, well, hang on, why don't I use processing, because that has nice graphics handling and can do serial stuff as well. So that's exactly what I've done here. And you can see now we have 9 plants going. So yeah, I just kind of shifted from using the Arduino serial monitor to using processing. Processing is a weird choice, I know, but I've been just mucking around with it recently just to make nice patterns and dots and little symmetrical things, again, just a little exercise to help me understand some things more. So processing, which is Java, has been in my mind, and I'm like, sweet. And I also kind of realized, well, I can probably use it to make some nice animations at some stage. So here's the time lapse of getting the other probes in, and everything is going to plan. You'll see we changed the colors a little bit there. I can't quite remember when I did that, but I was kind of in a bit of a pastel mood. And this is the last probe. I just wanted to include this. Boom. Just to show that all 16 probes are wired right. There's no shorting. It's a bit of a mess, but we can deal with that later. But yeah, here's a bit of a close-up tour. So this is the Chaos breadboard with all 16 probes. You'll see the screen is not ideal. The update rate is way too much, but here's all the plants with their probes. You'll see we've got a few new additions. And then here's the graph on the screen. So at this stage I'm like, okay, let's move on from breadboards. And this is where I fucked up. So I've never soldered onto these perf boards before. I mean, I got one that had all these rails on it and it kind of looked like it would fit everything and it would be really easy, but I did not expect how difficult I would find it to be able to solder onto these fucking copper pieces. Like, I really screwed this up. And I mean, look at that. I'll show you a close-up in a moment. You know, like, I really sucked, and that's okay. I mean, look, oh dear, I just couldn't get the solder to stay in one point, and I don't know if it's my iron or, I mean, it's me primarily, but a lack of flux also was a problem. Anyway, I learned a valuable lesson, and yeah, it kind of got to the point where I just went, fuck it, I have screwed this up. I need to get the resistors back because I don't have any more. This is me still in denial. I'm going, well, maybe I can just kind of plonk it down. Maybe if I use a bit more solder. But no, maybe if I was more skilled I could fix it, but I just couldn't. I should have given up way sooner. I did want to see if I could get it going though, and to be honest, some of the sensors worked. In fact, most of them did, but yeah, there was quite a bit of leakage of voltage. Is that the correct term? Anyway, there's another really good fuck up here in a minute. I'll point it out to you. Anyway, I've given up. So, oh no, I haven't. I'm still pretending like I can fix this with even more solder. And I've got my solder sucker, and that's not working because that sucks. And yeah, here we go. So I'm just heating everything up, ripping stuff off the board. And I wanted to include this because, you know, we often see the end result of someone's journey, and it's kind of easy to forget that, you know, even people who are real good at shit sucked at the start. You know, the first time you start something, you're going to be terrible, and that's okay. That's not just okay, it's necessary. Failure is necessary. It's the opposite of success. It's part of the process. You mess it up, you learn, you improve, rinse, repeat, right? And I've always been a little bit hesitant to show myself sucking at things that aren't music. And that's kind of held me back a bit with trying new things in life, I think. I don't quite like the idea of being a fool in front of people. But I'm getting quite used to it, or used to the idea at least. I think, you know, a bit of it's ego. I think a lot of it's ego. You know, I think making it as a musician in my early 20s to some level of just some level where people were liking what I was doing, I think that kind of maybe made it more difficult for me later in life to be new at something again. I'm not sure. I'm still unpacking all that. But I think just getting through these last few years and less and less fucks get given, I do see that people aren't really judging me, you know? In fact, I think most people are rooting for me. I mean, when I see somebody taking control over their life or learning a new skill or, you know, just doing something to better themselves, I'm really genuinely stoked. Like, I really, really enjoy seeing that. And it's a personal enjoyment too. I don't need other people around me for validation. Like, I just enjoy watching people try. And I think I need to learn to be in that other position So, here you go. This is me. I sucked loudly and proudly. I got overwhelmed, I got fumbly, I made it worse, and then I made it completely broken. And that's okay. Because I found this difficult, this was complex. The good kind of difficult. The type where you're quite contently frustrated and it's all self-inflicted. Perhaps it's because I knew that something difficult was coming up. This is definitely not good difficult. Maybe you're feeling that right now. I think about that sometimes. I acknowledge that there may be some people watching who, are in struggle town, are feeling a bit pressured or stressed or lost or sad. And I'm not going to turn this into a self-help thing, but I hope you're doing okay. And if you're not, maybe this is a good opportunity to reach out to someone. If you've been putting that off for a while, what better time to actually do something than when a random guy on the internet at 42 minutes who can't use a soldering iron just suggests it out of fucking nowhere. Hey, when is a good time, eh? So here I am trying to find a box. I like collecting boxes. If I ever get something which has a good box, I keep it, because every now and then a situation like this arises where I need a good box. So this white one does fit this, but I really have to cut it right down. But it fits very snugly, very happy with it. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get all of these connectors out the top. And I will give you a spoiler. This sucked as well. This ended up being a shit idea. I mean, the wires came out the top, but, surely I'm going to transport this to my room and I'm going to knock things and I'm going to need to see everything. So enclosing it inside of a box, not the best idea at this stage. I think perhaps I'm a little bit salty that I couldn't get the soldering stuff working, so I'm like, well, I'm going to put it in a box then, and the box is going to keep everything nice and tidy and rah. How good's a good box though, eh? Maybe I just wanted an excuse to use one of my good boxes from my collection. This was funny. I couldn't figure out how to get all these out the holes without really cramming them through. And then I'm like, I didn't cut a hole for the USB thing and the screen, and the idea just kept getting less and less like a good one. But I kept at it for a bit, and then there's some real good humour there. So here's my room. This is where I sleep. Suddenly personal, yeah. I like to keep a fairly tidy and clutter-free space. I find it helps with my creative endeavours that happen next door. There's the box. Yeah, I learned that one late too. I find having just a very clean house and having all my affairs in order allows me to go off and be creative and then come back and not have to stress out about general life stuff. So I'm giving you a tour of the plants at the moment. This is where they live. So my room just has white walls and some plants and a bed, basically. I was tossing up whether I should put footage of my bedroom out there, but I couldn't think of any reason why it's a bad idea. I mean, it's not full of, dungeon shit or dead bodies or... I don't know, it's quite a neutral room, so... yeah. This is where I sleep every night. And again, this is where the plants actually live. It's where I like them to be. And I like being in the room when the plants are in there, so it was inevitable that we would move here at some stage. I do actually have all of the species of these plants written down somewhere, but I can't be bothered getting the spreadsheet out at the moment. I'll do that in the next video. The next video is going to be pretty exciting, I reckon. I'll tell you about it very soon. We're nearly at the end. So yeah, my room, I've got a chair, a bed, some plants, a computer, of course, and it has some weights, because, I'm a computer nerd and literally nothing else I ever do in life will give me anything remotely like exercise, so I do keep up some basic weight stuff, and I do walk a lot. If I didn't do that, I would get quite decrepit later in life, I reckon. So this is a time lapse of me plugging all the probes into the box in its new location, and everything's going well. At this stage I'm just using the little screen as an indicator that everything is connecting right. I'm also being really careful. I don't want to break anything at this stage. I prefer not to go back into my workroom. And yeah, I think there's a few plants off camera, but I think we're done. So here's a bit of a tour during the daytime. So you can see the wires are visible, but I don't know. It's not something I've really thought about too much. I mean, the plants themselves are quite bold, so the eye tends to be drawn towards them rather than the wires, but then again, I'm used to looking at the wires. If somebody else walked into a room and all the plants had colourful wires coming out of them, yeah, maybe some questions asked there. Anyway, it all worked. Everything works. I'm getting accurate readings from 16 plants, all running off the ESP32 with a multiplexer. And yeah, I'm just really happy. You can see here, there's the screen, which I've updated the code for, so it kind of just ticks onto the next page every few seconds. The range is 0 to 4096, so yeah, basically if anything gets below, 1500, it's time to water them. And just finishing on this again, I was using processing, as I said, and it was fairly easy to turn the graphs into something a little bit more visually pleasant like this. And this isn't going to be its final form, so in the next video what I want to do is make them human. So each plant I'm going to give some attributes, some stats, some personality traits. I'm going to connect them up to a Telegram bot. I'm going to put them all in a chat room. Somehow going to link this up with OpenAI or ChatGPT and let them talk to each other. I don't know if I can get them to build relationships at this stage. Fuck, who knows what we can do in 6 months, but for now, the idea is a plant gets thirsty, it goes, "Oi Tom, need a drink?" And that starts off some conversations between all the plants. I just really like that idea. It's as simple as that. And I'm going to build it. In the next video, we'll get the Wi-Fi working and we'll start getting really nerdy. So thanks for coming along. I'm really happy with the outcome of this session. And yeah, if you're into it, stay tuned for part number 4 where Tom does even weirder shit and says even more random stuff during the long time-lapse videos of him doing stuff. Catch you later.